Thank you, Prom. My name is Kirk, and I'm an alcoholic, and it's good to be here. Um, I appreciate we've got some of our local homies here with us. Bob showed up from our meeting, Debbie, Bruce, and so it's nice to have a little support, from the folks you see every day. And so my story begins when I was 12 years old. I had my first drink of I drank beer and smoked a cigarette in the holly orchards of Gresham, Oregon, in the Pacific Northwest. And then I moved to back to Southern California in when I was 13. Went to junior high and high school there, and I didn't really care for beer, but started drinking fine wines like Annie Green Springs wine, plum wine. Uh, I liked I always liked umbrella drinks. I don't know why I just like candy. So I would drink that. I loved peppermint schnapps. I loved Southern Comfort. And then as time went on, I found that a lot of those drinks were had a lot of utility to them. Like you could start campfires with Cavassier, and you could brush your teeth with peppermint schnapps. And Frangelica was like having, peanut butter cups for dessert. So I really associate a lot of that. And in high school, I was in student government. I was an athlete, and I played basketball and football and baseball. And I liked basketball the best because we played games on Tuesday nights and Friday nights. So there was 2 nights a week that I got to drink, and I had a lot of privileges. I had good grades. Like I said, I was an athlete and I was in student government, so I had a lot of privileges, and my parents didn't need to do a lot of supervision. And so I took advantage of that. That's what I knew how to do very well. I got into college, and I joined a fraternity, and that was a drinking organization. And we used to have a saying around the fraternity house is, this is a SIG house. Ain't no study around here. If you want to study, you go to the library because we're partying. And we had beer in the refrigerator, beer on tap. Beer was everywhere, and it was a party the whole time. And I fit in very well with that organization. I became president of that organization, and that's just what I did. Got out of college and got in the construction products industry, and I was in charge of a region, a territory, and a couple of operations. And so I got to drink a lot. That time you take a client out to lunch, and hell, we might end up in Las Vegas, or we might end up, somewhere else. It could be gone 2 or 3 days, and no one ever thought much about that. It's just the way you did business back in the late '70s and early '80s. And I'll never forget. I used to see the one customer down in Orange, and they used to give awards out for safe driving, which were actually drunk driving, but they would have a plaque every year that they would put their names on if they had made it, and it was really a lot different. Than people weren't quite as fussy if you got a DUI. And anyway, so I did that, and I remember I was out of school a couple of years, and a friend of mine said, "Hey, you got to try some of this cocaine." And oh, all right, what the hell? And I remember having my first line of cocaine. We were drinking, of course, watching a football game, and I remember thinking, after having that first line, I thought, I'm going to try to implement this into my life every day. And most people don't think that way. They really don't. I'm from the first one. And so I drank damn near every day. And then I would use cocaine on special occasions. And it was kind of an enhancement. It allowed me to drink a lot more. And in 1987, after an intervention of family and friends, I walked into the Motor Valley Hospital, which is in east side of Los Angeles County, and into the Cocaine Anonymous meeting. And because I didn't have a problem with alcohol, I drank every day, but it never occurred to me that I had a problem with alcohol. And then they suggested that I have to give up all mind-altering chemicals, anything from the neck up. And shit, well, I guess I can do this, and I did it. And pretty soon, after about 90 days, I looked up and I was sober. I had a sponsor, and I went to I would go to meetings at the Claremont colleges out here in the Inland Empire, and my first sponsor was a professor of journalism at Harvey Mudd College, and so he handed me his business card, and he said, "I'll work with you as your sponsor, but I give you this on the contingency that you call me every day. You may not get me, but just that exercise of picking up the phone and calling every day was very helpful." And his parameters were, if you drank and used every day, then you go to a meeting every day, and you go to a meeting every day until you want to go to a meeting every day, and then it's okay to miss a meeting. And meeting makers make it. And I was fortunate. Uh, the meeting that I went to was started by Dr. Paul, who is the author of uh, Doctor Alcoholic Addict, and or the chapter on acceptance, which was page 449 in the third edition of the big book. I think it's page 419 now in the fourth edition. So we have the meeting I went to. We have direct connections with the big book, and it's always been a great bunch of people there, and a lot of different personalities. So I would another fellow that goes to our morning meeting. He's got about a little bit the same amount of time as I do, and so we go to the CA meeting. But then once you got a year in CA, you were a guru. So we had to start going to the AA meeting because we need some direction, and that just worked. It was a great bunch of people, and a lot of characters, and all these characters were I can see it like it was yesterday. And we had two guys that drove beer trucks, Beerman Dave 1, Beerman Dave 2, and they would show up. We had a fellow named Killer Steve. We had Pancho Wino. We had Big George from the water company. Big George was about 350 pounds and about 6'4", and he'd take a newcomer and he said, "Look, you get over there and you get me a cup of coffee, and you put cream and you put sugar in it and you stir it 10 times clockwise. And if you're not going to do it that way, don't bother doing it." So it was really a great bunch of characters. And we had a barber named Carmen, and Carmen was ex-gangbanger, but he wore a three-piece suit every day to cut hair. Yeah, he's always dressed very nice. And uh, he always said, every time a Mexican would walk in, he said, you get the hell out of here. Mexicans say stay sober, just get the hell out of here. So he was a very, he'd kind of challenge you, and, but he was a great guy. And he used to say that, what are the first three words a Mexican in a three-piece suit hears? And it, "Will the defendant please rise?" And that's just the way that it is. There was laughter. You couldn't, it was 6:30 in the morning and the place was just on fire all the time. And those guys are my heroes. They and the women, they were so bossy, just like the women we have in our meetings now. We got a lot of bossy women in there, but I've got to have that. I've got to be around that. I've got to understand, because I deal with women. It's been a great insight for me to work with women and know them intimately on these levels that we share in here, and they've all been a very big help to me. I lost my second wife, passed away on Tuesday of this week, and she came down with a very aggressive form of cancer, and we haven't been married. What I found out in here is I'm on wife number 3, and but they said, don't worry about that. It's not like fishing. There's not a limit on it. I might have a couple more after this one. So I've been married almost 40 years, 3 years to Sandy, 10 years to Hannah, and 27 to Susan. So as I spent time in the program, I made better choices on spouses. And but anyway, it was I had a couple of stepdaughters with her, who they still continue to call me dad. I'm the only one in their life, and it was an honor to be able to do that and have that responsibility, and it was a privilege. And all this, I learned great parenting skills in AA, and I learned a lot. And so she got a very aggressive form of melanoma, which moved into her lungs and liver and heart very quickly. It was like 3 weeks ago she was diagnosed, and then Tuesday she's dead. And anyway, but I was able to, she wanted to see me. And so I went in and saw her on Tuesday, and we had a nice long conversation. It was very, we laughed a lot, and uh, it was it was a difficult marriage in that, you know, she was there when I first got sober, and she used to say, "You used to have to go to those stupid meetings in the morning. When are you going to graduate from that damn program? You know, what the hell's with that? It's it's a cult. It's like you're getting brainwashed." And I always said, my brain needed washing. That's why I came in here. And you know, it's like the only step that mentions alcohol is the first step. Everything else is a program for living. And uh, it's worked for me for a long time. And I've had a number of sponsors. Um, Jim, the first guy I had, was like I said, he was a journalism professor, and he got back into the newspaper business and took a job as an editor out in Ventura. And when he left, he needed to borrow a little money, so I gave him like $1,400, and he moved away. Uh, and then a couple years later, I get this call from his dad, and he said Jim died, and he he had this small insurance policy. So he first thing he said was, "Is Dad, make sure Kirk gets his money for one." And so just that connection and learning how to live an upright life, and to you know, live by your commitments, and to, you know, how to follow through, you know, and he paid me back, and he died because he had a transplanted kidney, and it failed, and they couldn't get him a replacement. So when you so that was the reason he died. And then from there, I went to a guy, Shaky Bob was his name. He was over in the um, the Glendora, East LA County area, and he was just a long ways away. I got to see a sponsor on a regular basis. And then I had John F. And we got along really well. But then I got to the point where I was doing more meetings than he was, and he kind of faded away from the program until he came down with a throat cancer, and he died sober. He died sober, and that was just a few years ago. We would take him meetings because he couldn't get out of bed, so we'd go to his house and take him AA meeting. And I asked him, I said, you know, here you are, you got all this time sober, you're going to die here in the next few weeks. Why don't you have a drink? I mean, we'll bring you some heroin or something too. Might as well go all out. What the hell? He said, no, I want to die sober, you know. And so little things like that, you know, my thinking was always, you know, more is better. And he passed away. So I've learned how some of these guys have passed on with the class, uh, and then my ex-wife too. So life goes on, but we learn how to deal with these things. And then I got with Big Al, and I had Big Al for over 22 years. And Big Al started the 4-step workshop that we do twice a year. We put on a workshop for anyone that wants to go, and it really takes you through the steps. The 4-step, you know, it says that we have to do a thorough and moral inventory, and it's a great format right from the book. But one thing that always interested me about this is what happens as we're here for a while is we're always focused on our you know, our defects of character, our shortcomings, or whatever else that might have been the root to some of the bad things that have gone on in our life. And in any business inventory, you really got to keep track of your assets. And that's the first thing we do in that workshop is we do the 9 sheets of paper and the 3 columns, and we list our assets, because we forget about this. This disease takes us to the dark side. And I know you might not believe this, but every now and then I get a little fussy, and I might yell and scream and cuss, and but that doesn't happen very often. And for the most part, and I've got to focus on those things. You know, this has been I've been here for 37 years without alcohol, and it it just works. You know, it just works, um, and all these things that we hear. And I remember thinking that when I was told you go to a meeting every day, that if I were to, I kind of related it to return on investment. So if I put $1 in the pot every day, and by the end of the day, I got 23 other relatively good hours, and I did that with $1, I do it every day. And that's what happens for me. If I invest an hour a day, I usually have a pretty good day. You know, I've got 23 other good hours to go along with it. And I get that direction. And one thing about Al, he always said, no matter what happened, the last thing he'd say to me was, be good to yourself. Be good to yourself. And we forget to do that. And so the people I run with are very positive people. We all have our little depressions now and then, but we help each other, and it's really a tight group. And this morning we were in the meeting. We had a gentleman sharing. I'm not sure where it was from, but he talked about joy, and I heard a guy early on say that joy is the infallible evidence of the presence of God. And it's absolutely true. If I stay in that type of attitude, I've turned it over to God, and let Him do what He does and get out of the way. My life runs a lot better. And it's when I start inserting myself back into situations, and that where the trouble comes from. And Al used to say, a closed mouth gathers no foot. So I try to have that pause before I say something stupid. And that has been very helpful to me. And I wrote some of these things down. Al was just a wealth of information. Al used to say, I was brought up in the Mormon church. So as a kid, I'm out knocking on doors selling religion. And it was, I wasn't afraid to do that, but it was it was work. It was work. And I never connected with it. And I did it because that's what I was told to do it at my age. But Al always said, look, your prayers are 28% more effective if you do them on your knees. So when I walked into this program, and you all were talking about God, I thought that was the fire and brimstone God that I had as a child. And so I started going to the Catholic Church, and it hit home with me, And when the priest, Father Ned, we played a lot of golf together, told me that the nice thing about the Catholic Church is everything is in context. The message, the earth wasn't created 6,000 years ago. They believe it was 14 billion or whatever it was, but it just hit home. And they do pray on their knees. And Al used to say that if you pray out loud, you won't lie quite so much when you're praying. So, those little skills like that, the enhancement. And then there's also what's called ACTS, ACTS, adoration, confession, thanksgiving, and supplication. If I include those four in a prayer, I found them to be very, very effective. And when I do get in a real mess, and one thing I like what the Catholics taught me is repetition and the pre prayers. They're already put together. Like I'll say the Serenity Prayer 15 times in a row. There's a real issue that I'm walking into a bad situation, or with an upset customer, or whatever it might be. And if I do that, about 30 minutes later, I don't even remember what I was upset about. And so I've learned how to do that with Hail Mary and everything else, and it works. But we as alcoholics, we want to keep taking it back, and that's what amazes me. A newcomer was sharing today and talking about, well, I don't really want to do this, and I don't really want to do that, and I should be doing this. And there were some real hard ass people at the meetings that I would go to, some of the men's meetings. They say, sit down, shut up, take the cotton out of your mouth or out of your ears and put it in your mouth, and listen, because I have to remember that my absolute best thinking got me here. Best I could do without walking into these rooms. That's what my thinking did. So I had to change everything, and and just trust. I don't know if you ever played that game as a kid with your friends. You know, you stand there and you cross your arms, and you'd fall backwards, and your friends would catch you before you hit the ground, hopefully. And it's kind of the way it is now. I mean, some of these things I do, and I worry about doing the right thing because what if it's not right? But you know what? That path or that exercise has always been the direction that I needed to take. And I've been here a long time, and that false evidence appearing real, the fear has never happened. You know, I'm in good health. I I have a great marriage. It took a lot of work. It took counseling. It's been a long road, but it's the best thing I've ever had. And the same thing with it's my life is just beyond belief. I remember early on hearing that, and when I look back, I remember I had a problem with the IRS when I walked in there. I had like a $3,000 bill that didn't get paid that I had to deal with. And then they went from four figures to five figures to six figures to seven figures to eight figures. So the skills that I acquired, I was able to deal with more situations with just more zeros at the end. And that's what I've learned. I lost my job in 1994, a career that I thought I was going to have the rest of my life. And so many people in this fellowship, in that meeting, the Pomona meeting, like Ralph and Sid. Sid looks like a steel worker. He's got this bald, he's got hair growing out from underneath his t-shirt, and just a badass. And he was the head of the economics department at Cal Poly Pomona. You know, you wouldn't think like that. But anyway, they directed me back into graduate school, and that's been a great advancement for me. It just really helped me. And I think that's what happened in here. You know, we get the confidence to do these things, and you just hang out with people that are doing the right things. And I just can't talk, you know, tell you all the good things that I've had. And I was reading this other thing here too. A guy mentioned the other day, says recovery is the only thing that alcoholics will do in moderation. You know, if we put a full press on it, the good things do happen. And it's just having that faith and just remembering. And Al used to sit me down and say, okay, let's look at this chapter 5 right here. It says, remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. What are the most important words in that sentence? Is it cunning? No. Is it baffling? No. Is it powerful? No. It's remember. It's remember. Because what happens to me when I take a drink, I might as well grab a sack full of cocaine, a couple of hookers, and I'm getting on an airplane going to Las Vegas. Might as well take everything that I own, put it out to the curb, because that's going to go next. And that's what happens. I have to play the whole tape. I just can't play answering the call for the first drink. And I have to do that. So, and all kinds of, and I'm in a phase now that there are single words in each of the steps, and some of them just stand out like they're just glaring at me, and they just hit home, like the ninth step. You know, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except that one word, except when to do so would injure them or others. So in 1991, I had some extra dynamite laying around the house, working in the heavy construction business, and we used to use it to hunt pigs. We'd go to Santa Cruz Island and hunt wild pigs, wild boars, and sheep, and we used the dynamite to get them moving around. And but I still had about 5 or 6 sticks out in the garage, and I thought, you know what, I think I gotta get rid of that stuff. I had kids running around here. You know, what are you gonna do if they get a hold of some of this dynamite? So I called Upland PD. I said, "Hey, I got this dynamite." And they rolled, and they said, "Well, thank you very much." And they called the Ontario Bomb Squad. Bomb Squad comes out. They grab the dynamite, go down to a rock quarry, and detonate it. And they said, "Thank you very much. You're a good citizen," and went on their way. Well, 2 weeks later, I get a bill from the city of Upland for $1,500 for explosives removal, and then I get a letter from the San Bernardino County District Attorney arraigning me on felony charges of possession of an explosive device. So after a plea bargain to a health and safety code violation and a $6,000 fine, I end up on probation, and that's in sober. I've been I've been sober 4 years, and that's why those one little words in there are important. And of course, my sponsor said afterward, "Oh, you dumb shit! Why didn't you call me before, not after?" There are ways we can make amends. And there was a lady that used to go to the Pomona meeting. She was called her Crazy Mary. She has curly hair and it was everywhere. And she was an executive of a bank, and she was a kleptomaniac. So on weekends, she'd go out and steal makeup from the local drugstore. She just did it. So her sponsor she painted park benches on weekends, because you can't go back in there and say, "Look, I did all this." If you do that, you're going to injure her, injure yourself. And that's what I did. I didn't need to do what I did to make amends. And that's why, it's so important with a sponsor. I've got to have that direction. And it's very, particularly when it comes to matters like that. And there are so many people in here that are from backgrounds they just fit. There's a couple of great attorneys that go to our meeting, dentists, orthodontists, MDs. It's just a great group. You always have a reference. I've always said there's not a person that you'll meet or there's not a problem that you'll have that someone in AA hasn't already gone through. And I found that to be exactly true. And even when I sold my company in 2009, I sold to a private equity group out of Manhattan, and I've had a few issues with them on a structure and a couple of notes. And so who did I talk in our meeting? I got Mac. He deals with private equity every day. I got Jeff M. from Chicago. He works for a private equity firm. And I got really good direction, as to what I needed to do. And it's just, it's a real great resource.
2 minutes, Kirk, 2 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes. Okay, I'm going to say one thing. I do pretty good with acronyms. And so we've got this guy that comes to the meeting. He's from Georgia. His name's David A. And he comes in, and he's got all these acronyms. He's got Q-tip, which is quit taking it personal. He's got another one, wait. Why am I talking? I just need to shut up, that closed mouth thing. And I said, keep your spoon in your own bowl. And just those little things that we have to do in here, they're simple, but they work. And so if you're new here, keep coming back. Just remember, you go to a meeting every day until you want to go to a meeting every day, then it's okay to miss one. And to invest an hour is not that big a deal. But Prom, thank you so much for inviting me out. It was great to see you. Great to see everyone here in the meeting. Thanks to the homies for coming out, Bob and Bruce and Deb. Oh, and Redeema's here. All right, Redeema. Where you been, girl? Anyway, that's it. Keep coming back. Thanks for letting me share.